"We must make a child," the Apache woman said,
Trouble's coming.
and the cowboy went
It always
completely
does
still.
out here.
Cowboy stories. The wind moved in waves, whispering through the tall grasses and rattling the leaves of the few scattered trees. He had been traveling for days, guiding a small herd of cattle to a distant ranch, and the journey had left him both tired and reflective. Out here in the vast openness, James felt free, but also aware of the loneliness that had followed him for many years. He was a cowboy by trade and by heart. His life was simple but demanding. Mornings were spent tending to cattle, repairing fences, and riding for hours to make sure the herd stayed safe. Evenings were for campfires, a little whiskey, and the quiet stars that spread across the night sky like scattered diamonds. He liked the rhythm of his life. It was honest, it was physical, and it demanded respect. Yet, despite the freedom of the plains, there was always a lingering emptiness in James's chest, a part of him that longed for connection, for someone who could understand the quiet that lived inside him. That afternoon, as he guided his horses along a narrow trail through a canyon, he noticed movement ahead. At first, he thought it was the wind, or perhaps a shadow playing tricks on his eyes. But as he drew closer, he saw a figure standing near the edge of the rocks. A woman. She was tall and strong, with dark hair braided neatly down her back. Her clothing was simple, but there was a dignity in the way she carried herself that made James pause. She was watching him, her eyes calm but piercing, as though she could see straight through the layers of dust, sweat, and solitude that cloaked him. James slowed his horse, unsure whether to approach or turn away. He had grown cautious over the years, wary of strangers, especially in a land where tension between settlers and Apache people often ran high. He remembered stories from other cowboys about ambushes and misunderstandings, and he knew he had to be careful. Yet something about this woman made him stop. She did not seem threatening. There was no anger in her gaze, only curiosity and quiet strength. "Good afternoon," James called out finally, his voice steady, though his heart raced a little. The woman nodded slightly. "Good afternoon," she replied. Her voice was soft but firm, carrying the calm of someone used to living in harmony with nature. James dismounted, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I don't mean to intrude. I'm just passing through," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. She studied him for a moment before responding. "You are far from the town," she said. "The plains can be lonely." James felt a faint smile tug at the corner of his lips. "You could say that again," he replied. "I've been riding for days, and these plains don't offer much company besides the wind and the cattle." The woman's eyes softened, and for a moment, James felt a strange sense of ease. There was something about her presence that made the vast emptiness of the plains feel less intimidating. Her name, he would later learn, was Aeon. She was part of the Apache people who had lived in these lands long before cowboys like him arrived. She moved with a quiet confidence, aware of her surroundings and of the world in ways James was only beginning to understand. They began to talk. At first, it was small talk about the weather, the land, and the journey, but gradually their conversation deepened. James shared stories of cattle drives, the challenges of surviving in harsh conditions, and the rare moments of joy he found in the work he loved. Aeon listened carefully, nodding and sometimes asking questions that made James think more deeply about his own life. She spoke of her people, their traditions, the importance of family, and the ways they survived and thrived in the desert lands. There was an unspoken understanding growing between them. Both had lived hard lives, both had faced dangers and loss, and both had learned the value of patience and observation. In her presence, James felt a sense of respect and admiration he had rarely experienced. And Aeon, for her part, seemed to see the man behind the rugged exterior, recognizing his quiet courage and the honesty in his actions. As the afternoon sun began to sink lower, casting long shadows across the plains, James realized he had been talking for hours without noticing the time passing. The wind had cooled, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and earth. He was aware of a deepening connection, something neither of them could name yet, but that was unmistakably real. Aeon finally broke the comfortable silence. "You are different from the others I have seen," she said quietly. "You listen, you observe. You do not rush to judgment." James felt a flush of modesty. He had never thought of himself as different, only as someone who tried to survive and do his work honestly. "I've learned to be careful," he admitted. "The world out here can be unforgiving." She nodded, understanding. "And yet you continue to ride it alone," she said. "There is courage in that, but also a loneliness." Her words struck him more deeply than he expected. He had grown used to his solitary life, but hearing it described so plainly made him aware of the part of him that had been yearning for connection. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch, feeling the weight of her observation and the truth it carried. Eventually, Aeon smiled faintly, a smile that was both gentle and knowing. "The plains can teach us much," she said, "about patience, about observation, about respect, and sometimes they bring people together who would never have met otherwise." James returned her smile, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He mounted his horse again, but this time he did not rush away. He wanted to stay, to learn more, to understand the world through her eyes as well as his own. "Will I see you again?" he asked, almost hesitantly. Aeon nodded. "The plains are wide, but paths often cross when they need to." As James rode away, he felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. He knew that this encounter would change something in him, though he did not yet know how. The memory of her calm, steady gaze lingered in his mind, a reminder that the world held more than just the endless trails and dusty towns. There were people with stories, wisdom, and strength, people who could touch a life in ways one could never predict. The sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the plains bathed in the soft glow of twilight. James guided his horse through the cooling air, thinking about the woman he had met. For the first time in a long while, he felt the stirrings of hope and curiosity about life beyond his usual routines. The plains were still vast and quiet, but now they seemed full of possibility, full of stories waiting to unfold. As night fell, he set up his small camp near a creek, building a fire and listening to the sounds of the desert at night. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the stars shone brightly overhead. He could not shake the feeling that his encounter with Aeon was the beginning of something important, something that would test him, challenge him, and perhaps teach him more about life, courage, and connection than he had ever imagined. James lay under the stars that night, the fire crackling softly beside him, thinking of the woman who had spoken with calm authority and gentle strength. The plains were still wide and lonely, but they no longer felt quite so empty. For the first time in a long while, he looked forward to what tomorrow might bring. Little did he know, this meeting was only the beginning. The bond that had quietly formed that afternoon would soon grow, and the decisions he would face in the coming days would test not only his courage but his heart. For now, though, he simply rested, letting the night and the plains speak their quiet wisdom, aware that life sometimes moved in mysterious ways, bringing the unexpected right when it was needed most. The next morning, James awoke to the sound of birds singing over the gentle rush of the creek. The fire he had built the night before had burned low, leaving small embers glowing softly in the cool morning air. He stretched, feeling the stiffness in his muscles from yesterday's long ride, and thought again about Aeon. The memory of her calm, steady presence lingered in his mind, and he realized he had been looking forward to seeing her again without even fully understanding why. As he saddled his horse, he decided to take a different trail, one that led toward a nearby ridge where he had seen signs of a campsite that might indicate Aeon's presence. The plains were wide, and the paths were unpredictable, but James trusted that if their paths were meant to cross, they would. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dry earth, and for the first time in years, James felt a sense of anticipation that was both thrilling and unnerving. It was late morning when he spotted her again. Aeon stood near a small cluster of rocks, her silhouette outlined against the bright sky. She was tending to a few small animals, and the way she moved, graceful, careful, and confident, caught James's attention immediately. He dismounted quietly, not wanting to startle her, and approached with a polite nod. "Good morning," he said. Aeon looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. There was a quiet smile on her face, one that seemed to understand more than words could say. "Good morning," she replied. "You have returned sooner than I expected." James chuckled softly. "I was hoping our paths might cross again," he admitted. "The plains are wide, but some paths seem to find their way to each other." She nodded, as if she understood exactly what he meant. "The land has a way of bringing people together when it is necessary," she said. "Sometimes it is patience, sometimes it is timing, sometimes it is fate." They spent the morning walking together along the ridge, talking about the land, the animals, and the quiet lessons the plains could teach. James listened with growing respect, amazed by how much Aeon knew about the natural world, about survival, and about the balance that existed between humans and nature. She pointed out tracks of deer, the signs of an approaching storm, and the hidden springs that could provide water when the sun was relentless. In return, James shared stories of his own life, of the cattle drives that had taken him across hundreds of miles, of the towns where the saloons were lively but often dangerous, and of the quiet satisfaction he felt when a long day's work was done. Aeon listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made him think more deeply about the world he had often taken for granted. As the afternoon sun climbed high, they found a shaded spot beneath a large tree and rested. The conversation shifted, becoming more personal. James felt a strange mixture of caution and curiosity. He had always kept his life private, especially from strangers, but there was something about Aeon that made him feel he could be honest. "I have lived on these plains for many years," he said slowly. "I have seen a lot of danger, and I have lost people I cared about. I have learned to be careful with trust." Aeon nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Trust is earned, not given," she said. "But when it is earned, it can be stronger than anything else." They shared a quiet moment, the kind that comes when two people understand each other without needing to speak. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying with it the sounds of the plains, the distant cry of a hawk, the murmur of a stream, and the soft movement of grasses swaying in the breeze. It was in this silence that James felt a shift inside him, a realization that he was no longer merely a lone cowboy on the plains. There was someone here who saw him, truly saw him, and that recognition was both comforting and unsettling. Aeon leaned back against the tree, looking out over the wide expanse of land. "James," she said carefully, "there is something I must tell you, something important." James turned his attention fully to her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. She took a deep breath, as if choosing her words with care. "In our culture, family is sacred. It is not just about birth, but about the bonds we create, the responsibility we carry, and the respect we give to those we love. I see in you a strength, a patience, and a respect for life that is rare. I believe that if we are to continue walking these paths together, we must think about the future, about life, about family." James felt a chill run through him, a mixture of surprise and wonder. He had been expecting conversation about the land, about survival, maybe even about friendship, but not this. "Family," he repeated, unsure of what to say. Aeon met his gaze directly. "Yes," she said softly but firmly. "We must make a child. It is not just about bringing life into the world. It is about creating a bond, a connection, a future. I see in you the potential to build something meaningful, something that honors both of our worlds." James went completely still. The words hung in the air like the heavy, warm afternoon sun. He had not anticipated this, and yet, as he looked at her, he understood the depth of her meaning. This was not a request made lightly. This was a statement of courage, of vision, and of trust. Aeon was offering him a part of herself, a part of her life, and asking him to consider the same. He felt a wave of emotions, surprise, fear, curiosity, and something deeper, something he could not yet name. He thought about the life he had known, the risks of stepping beyond familiar paths, and the societal expectations that would challenge such a union. And yet he also thought about the quiet strength of this woman, her wisdom, and the undeniable connection that had formed between them over just a few days. James finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Aeon, this is not something I have considered before." It is a serious matter," she nodded. "I understand," she said. "It is serious, it is sacred, and it is not a decision to be made lightly. But I have seen the way you live, the way you respect life, and the way you understand the plains. I believe that together we could create something strong, something meaningful, something that honors both our lives." James looked out over the plains, the vast landscape stretching endlessly before him. He thought about the cattle drives, the solitude of the nights under the stars, and the sense of freedom he had always prized. And yet, he realized that he had never known true connection, never experienced the depth of trust and understanding that he now felt. Aeon's words, though startling, opened a door he had never dared to imagine. For the rest of the afternoon, they walked together in quiet reflection. Neither spoke much, each lost in thought, each considering the possibilities and the responsibilities that lay ahead. James understood that this was not a simple decision, and that it required courage, patience, and honesty. He also knew that his life, as he had known it, would change forever if he chose to embrace this path. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plains, James felt a strange sense of peace. The decision was not yet made, but the conversation had begun. He realized that life was not just about survival or work or routine. It was about connection, about understanding, and about the bonds that could give life meaning. Aeon smiled at him quietly, sensing the shift in his thoughts. "We will take our time," she said softly. "There is no rush, but know that the future is not something to fear. It is something to build carefully with respect and courage." James nodded, feeling the weight and the promise of her words. He mounted his horse again, the plains glowing under the last light of the day. He rode slowly, thinking about the path ahead, about the responsibilities and joys that awaited, and about the unexpected way life had brought him to this moment. That night, under a sky full of stars, James sat by his fire, reflecting on the day. He thought about Aeon, about her courage, and about the depth of her vision. He realized that he was no longer just a lone cowboy on the plains. He was a man at the beginning of a journey that would test his heart, his courage, and his understanding of life itself. And for the first time, he felt a sense of anticipation, not for the land, not for the cattle, but for the life and connections that awaited him in ways he had never imagined. The days that followed brought James a strange mix of excitement and unease. Every morning, he rode through the plains with his thoughts tangled between the familiar life he had always known and the new possibilities Aeon had introduced. The plains were still wide, still golden, but now they seemed to hold more than just cattle and trails. They carried the weight of choices, of futures, of lives intertwined in ways he had never dared imagine. James found himself thinking constantly about Aeon. He remembered the steady way she had looked at him, the calm authority in her voice, and the words that had both startled and fascinated him. "We must make a child." The phrase had lingered in his mind, refusing to leave. He rode slowly during the cattle drives, letting the wind carry his thoughts, imagining what life could be like with her, imagining the risks, imagining the joy and the challenges that lay ahead. At first, he tried to push the thoughts aside. He was a cowboy, used to a life of independence and solitude. Making a family, especially with someone from a culture so different from his own, was not part of the life he had planned. He had grown up in towns where cowboys were expected to be tough, to avoid complications, to stay focused on work and survival. Yet, every time he tried to dismiss the idea, Aeon's face appeared in his mind. Her quiet strength, her wisdom, and the deep respect she had shown for life made it impossible for him to turn away. One evening, after a long day of riding and tending to the herd, James stopped near a small grove of trees to rest. He dismounted, tying his horse to a sturdy branch, and sat on a fallen log. The sky was painted in hues of pink and purple, the sun slowly sinking behind distant hills. He pulled out a small notebook he carried, a habit from years of documenting the land, the herds, and occasionally his thoughts. But today, the pages remained blank. He was not thinking about trails or cattle. He was thinking about Aeon and the choice that now faced him. He knew that agreeing to Aeon's request would change everything. It was not just about bringing a child into the world. It was about commitment, about crossing cultural boundaries, about stepping into a life that could be both beautiful and challenging. He thought about the judgment he might face from other cowboys, the misunderstanding that could arise from those who did not know Aeon or respect her traditions. Yet he also thought about the quiet moments they had shared, the laughter, the conversations, and the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. The night was cool, and James lit a small fire, staring into the flames as if seeking answers within them. He remembered stories from his childhood about men who had chosen safety over courage, about lives that passed quietly because fear had held them back. He did not want to be that man. Yet, fear was still there, whispering doubts and warnings. He had never faced a choice like this before, one that demanded not just courage but the willingness to step into the unknown. As he sat there, he thought about the kind of life he could offer Aeon and a child. He imagined teaching them the ways of the plains, sharing stories of the land, showing them how to respect nature and life itself. He imagined nights by the fire, the warmth of family filling the space that had once been empty. And yet, alongside these dreams, he imagined the difficulties, the prejudice, the misunderstandings, the dangers that came with crossing cultural boundaries. The next day, James found Aeon waiting near a small stream where she often gathered water. She looked up as he approached, her eyes calm and steady, as if she knew what he had been thinking. "James," she said softly, "I know the choice I have asked you to consider is not easy. I know it is not a decision to be made lightly." He nodded, finding comfort in her understanding. "It is not easy," he admitted. "I have spent my life alone, following the paths I knew, and now I am asked to step into a life that is unknown, uncertain, and different from anything I have ever imagined." Aeon sat beside him, her presence gentle and grounding. "Life is always uncertain," she said, "but the courage to step forward to create something meaningful is what gives life its depth. We cannot know what challenges will come, but we can choose to face them together." James thought about her words long after they were spoken. She had a way of speaking that made the world seem both larger and more intimate at the same time. He realized that the plains, which had always been a symbol of freedom, could now also symbolize connection. That same freedom he had prized could be shared with someone else, someone who respected the land, the animals, and the rhythms of life. Over the next few days, their relationship deepened in quiet ways. They worked together, tending to the herd, repairing fences, and gathering supplies. James taught Aeon some of the cowboy skills he had learned over the years: how to ride for long hours, how to read the weather, and how to care for the animals. In return, Aeon shared knowledge of the land that James had never known: the hidden springs, the edible plants, and the ways to move silently and safely across the plains. During these moments, James observed her closely, noticing the strength in her hands, the steadiness in her movements, and the clarity in her eyes. He realized that this woman had lived with courage all her life, facing challenges that he could not fully understand. And yet she trusted him enough to invite him into her world, to consider building a future together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains, Aeon spoke again. "James," she said quietly, "there is no rush. We will take our time. But know that life is short, and the moments we have are precious. The decision you face is not just about the present, it is about the future, about the children we might bring into the world, and about the bond we create together." James listened, feeling the weight and the truth of her words. He thought about the years he had spent alone, the nights by the fire, the endless horizons, and the silent stars. He realized that all of that freedom, all of that solitude, had led him to this moment, to this choice, and to this woman who had touched something deep inside him. That night, he wrote in his notebook, pouring his thoughts onto the pages for the first time in weeks. He wrote about fear, about hope, about the desire for connection that had grown stronger with each day. He wrote about Aeon, about her courage, and about the possibilities their future might hold. And as he wrote, he felt a clarity he had not known before, a sense that the choice he faced, though daunting, was also an opportunity to live fully and meaningfully. The next morning, James made a decision. He did not speak of it immediately, nor did he announce it with words. Instead, he acted in small ways, showing Aeon through gestures, through care, and through quiet attention that he was ready to take the path she had suggested. He listened more closely, observed more carefully, and shared his own thoughts and dreams with her, building a foundation of trust and mutual understanding. Aeon noticed the change in him, though she did not push for confirmation. She knew that true decisions were not made under pressure, but through reflection, courage, and readiness. She continued to share her life and her knowledge with him, guiding him gently through the rhythms of her world while respecting the experiences and values he brought from his own. By the end of the week, James and Aeon had formed a bond that went beyond words. It was built on trust, respect, and shared experience. The plains, once a symbol of solitude, had become a place of connection and possibility. James realized that life was no longer just about survival or work. It was about building, nurturing, and embracing the challenges and joys that came with real human connection. As they sat together one evening, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and red, James finally spoke the words he had kept in his heart. "Aeon, I do not know what the future holds. I do not know all the challenges we will face, but I know that I want to face them with you. I want to build that bond, to create a life with you, and to honor the trust you have shown me." Aeon smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and reached out to take his hand. "Then we will walk this path together," she said, "carefully, with respect and with courage. The plains will teach us, guide us, and support us. And together, we will create something meaningful, something strong, something lasting." James squeezed her hand, feeling the weight and the promise of her words. For the first time, he felt that he was not just a cowboy riding alone across the plains. He was a man on the threshold of a life that could be richer, fuller, and more meaningful than he had ever imagined. And he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage, hope, and the woman who had changed everything simply by trusting him. The plains stretched endlessly before them, wide and golden under the setting sun, but now they felt like a place of possibility. James understood that true courage was not just about facing danger or surviving the wilderness. It was about opening one's heart, making difficult choices, and embracing the unknown. And as he rode alongside Aeon into the coming days, he felt ready to meet the future, whatever it might bring. The days that followed felt different for James and Aeon. The plains, which had always been a symbol of solitude and routine, now seemed alive with possibilities. There was a quiet understanding between them, an unspoken bond that had begun to grow stronger with every shared task, every conversation, and every moment of mutual respect. They had chosen to take a step forward together, to embrace the life that had been quietly waiting for them, and that choice brought both joy and challenges. James had never imagined that he would find such deep companionship. Aeon's presence was calming yet invigorating, a constant reminder that life could be more than survival, more than work and routine. He found himself laughing more freely, noticing small details of the plains he had overlooked before, and appreciating moments of stillness that had once felt empty. Aeon, in turn, seemed to flourish alongside him. She shared stories of her childhood, of her family, and of the lessons her people had passed down through generations. Each story carried wisdom, a deep connection to the land, and a reverence for life that James had never fully understood until now. Their days were filled with work, but it was different from the work James had done alone. They repaired fences together, checked the cattle, and traveled across the plains, teaching and learning from each other. Aeon taught James how to find hidden water sources and edible plants, skills that could be crucial in times of need. James, in return, shared his knowledge of horseback riding, cattle management, and survival skills that had kept him alive in the harshest conditions. They moved as a team, complementing each other's strengths and covering each other's weaknesses, and James realized that this partnership was something he had longed for without fully knowing it. One evening, after a long day of riding, they made camp near a small hill overlooking the plains. The sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and purple, the sun sinking slowly behind distant mountains. They sat together, sharing a simple meal and talking quietly. James felt a surge of gratitude for this moment, for the life they were beginning to build together. "You know," Aeon said softly, "the future is not always easy, but it is full of possibilities. We can create a life that honors both our worlds if we are willing to face the challenges." James nodded. "I know," he replied. "It won't be simple. There will be judgment, misunderstandings, and moments when the world feels against us, but I want to try. I want to face it with you." Aeon reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Then we will face it together. We will learn, we will adapt, and we will grow. The bond we create will be strong because it is built on respect, trust, and love." As the weeks passed, James and Aeon's relationship deepened in ways that went beyond words. They began to discuss practical matters about the future, including the idea of starting a family. It was not a conversation taken lightly. They spoke openly about their hopes, fears, and responsibilities, acknowledging the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that raising a child in a world that did not fully accept their union would require courage, patience, and resilience. James thought long and hard about what it meant to bring a child into their lives. He imagined teaching a child the ways of the plains, showing them how to respect the land, the animals, and the people around them. He imagined passing on the lessons he had learned about courage, honesty, and hard work. Aeon, in turn, spoke of the values she wished to instill in their child, the importance of family, the strength of community, and the wisdom of their ancestors. Despite the joy of their growing bond, challenges soon appeared. Some cowboys and settlers noticed James spending more time with Aeon and whispered rumors. There were moments when James felt the sting of judgment, the cold glare of disapproval, and the weight of societal expectations pressing down on him. He struggled with these moments, questioning whether he was doing the right thing, whether his choice to embrace this unconventional path would bring happiness or hardship. Aeon, however, remained steady. She reminded him that the strength of their bond was more important than the opinions of others. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she said one evening, "but the decision to face it anyway. The world may not understand us, but that does not diminish what we share." Together, they faced these challenges with determination. They rode across the plains, avoiding areas where tension was high, and they learned to rely on their skills and each other's support. Every day brought new lessons, from navigating the land to understanding the reactions of those around them. And with each challenge, their trust and commitment grew stronger. One day, as they rested near a flowing river, Aeon spoke of the next step in their journey. "James," she said, "we have learned to trust each other, to work together, and to face challenges as a team. Now it is time to think about what comes next. Our bond can grow stronger, and we can begin the journey of creating a family together. But it will require patience, care, and courage." James listened, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. He had never considered himself ready for such a step, yet he realized that his life had already been shaped by the courage and wisdom of the woman beside him. He nodded slowly. "I am ready," he said. "I want to face this journey with you no matter the challenges." Aeon smiled, a soft and knowing smile, and reached out to hold his hand. "Then we will walk this path together," she said, "step by step with respect, love, and courage. Our life will not be simple, but it will be meaningful, and our family will carry the strength of both our worlds." In the days that followed, James and Aeon began preparing for the future in practical ways. They worked to make their home safer and more comfortable, gathering supplies, reinforcing their shelter, and planning how to raise a child in a way that honored both of their cultures. They taught each other skills that would be essential for their new life. James showed Aeon how to care for animals and manage the land, while Aeon taught James about the traditions and values that were important to her people. Through it all, their bond deepened. They shared laughter and quiet moments, learning the rhythms of each other's lives and the unspoken language of trust and care. James felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. The plains, once a place of solitude, had become a space of life, connection, and hope. One evening, as they sat by the fire watching the stars emerge in the night sky, James reflected on the journey they had taken together. "I never imagined life could be like this," he said quietly. "I thought freedom meant being alone, riding across the plains with only the wind and the stars. But now I see that true freedom is sharing life, love, and responsibility with someone you trust and respect." Aeon nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Freedom is not just solitude," she said softly. "It is the courage to face the unknown, to create and to build something that lasts. Together, we can create a life that is rich, meaningful, and strong." As the night deepened, they spoke of the future with quiet determination. They imagined the laughter of children, the lessons they would teach, and the love that would bind their family together. They spoke of challenges, knowing they would come, but also of the strength they had already discovered in each other. And in that shared vision, they found hope, courage, and the promise of a life filled with meaning and connection. The plains stretched endlessly before them, quiet and golden under the rising moon. James understood that the journey ahead would not be simple, but it would be theirs. Together, they would face the challenges, embrace the joys, and create a life that honored both their worlds. And for the first time, he felt truly ready, not just as a cowboy surviving the plains, but as a man prepared to build a family, to nurture love, and to walk a path of courage and purpose alongside the woman who had changed everything. The months that followed were full of preparation, anticipation, and quiet joy. James and Aeon had settled into a rhythm, a life that blended their worlds in ways neither could have imagined before meeting. They rose early to tend to the cattle, repaired fences and shelters, and spent afternoons walking the plains, sharing stories and learning from each other. Every day, their bond grew stronger, strengthened by shared responsibility, mutual respect, and the unspoken understanding that they were building something meaningful together. Aeon often spoke of the child they hoped to bring into the world. She explained the values she wished to instill: respect for the land, courage in the face of challenges, and the wisdom of their ancestors. James, in turn, thought about how he could teach the child the skills he had learned across the plains: how to ride, care for animals, and navigate the land safely. Together, they dreamed of a future filled with love, learning, and shared experiences, knowing it would not always be easy but confident that their bond would carry them through. As the weeks passed, the day finally came when Aeon went into labor. James was by her side the entire time, holding her hand, offering encouragement, and staying calm despite the fear and excitement swelling in his chest. The plains, which had always felt vast and empty, now seemed alive with energy, as if nature itself was witnessing the arrival of a new life. The birth was long and challenging, testing both Aeon's strength and James's patience. He had never seen such courage, such determination, as he watched her endure each moment with unwavering resolve. Her calm and steady presence during the labor reminded him why he had fallen in respect and love for her. Finally, after hours of anticipation and effort, their child was born, a healthy, strong baby who immediately became the center of their world. James held the child in his arms, feeling a wave of emotions he could not fully name. Pride, joy, awe, and love mingled together as he looked down at the tiny face, so full of promise. Aeon rested beside him, exhausted but radiant, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "We did it," she whispered softly, her voice full of relief and wonder. James nodded, unable to speak at first, his heart overwhelmed. "Yes," he finally said, "we did it, and this is the beginning of something greater than either of us could have imagined." In the days and weeks that followed, they settled into the routines of caring for their child. James learned to change diapers, soothe cries, and recognize the different ways the baby communicated needs. Aeon guided him with patience, showing him how to nurture, teach, and support their child. Together, they discovered that parenthood required not just skill but understanding, compromise, and the ability to find joy in the smallest moments. Their life was not without challenges. Some neighbors and travelers whispered about their union, questioning the blending of cultures and traditions. There were times when James felt the sting of judgment and the pull of doubt. Yet, whenever fear or uncertainty arose, he looked at Aeon and their child and remembered why he had chosen this path. The love and trust they shared were stronger than any rumor or disapproval. Aeon reminded him often that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. She taught him that challenges could be faced together, with respect, patience, and determination. Slowly, James began to see the truth in her words. Life with their child became a series of lessons, small victories, and moments of laughter and tenderness. He learned to balance work, survival, and family, discovering a strength and patience he had never known before. The child grew quickly, a curious and lively little one who absorbed lessons from both parents. James taught riding, caring for animals, and reading the signs of the land. Aeon shared stories, songs, and teachings from her culture, ensuring that their child understood and respected the wisdom of their ancestors. Together, they nurtured not only the child's skills but their sense of identity, teaching them that strength and kindness could coexist, and that courage was found in understanding and compassion as much as in physical endurance. The years passed, and James often reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the lonely cowboy riding across the plains to a man with a family, a partner, and a purpose beyond himself, he had changed in ways he had never anticipated. Aeon had opened his eyes to a world beyond survival, showing him the depth of connection, the power of trust, and the beauty of shared life. Their child became a symbol of their love, courage, and determination, a living testament to the life they had built together. One day, as they walked across the plains with their child running ahead, laughing and chasing the shadows, James turned to Aeon and took her hand. "I never imagined life could be like this," he said quietly. "It's more than I ever hoped for. You've changed everything for me." Aeon smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "We've built this together," she replied softly. "Our journey was never simple, but it was ours, and the future, it is still ours to shape." Their life continued in a rhythm that blended love, work, and learning. James found satisfaction not only in the daily labor of the plains, but in the small moments of joy. The child's laughter, Aeon's quiet guidance, and the shared understanding that their bond could withstand any challenge. They taught their child the lessons they valued most: respect for the land, courage in the face of adversity, the importance of family, and the power of kindness and understanding. Over time, their story became known among neighbors and travelers, not as a tale of scandal or difference, but as a story of courage, trust, and love. People began to see that the bond between James and Aeon, and the life they had created, was a testament to the possibility of unity, respect, and hope, even in a world that often judged quickly and unfairly. Their family stood as proof that love, when built on respect and courage, could thrive despite challenges and differences. As their child grew older, James and Aeon reflected on the journey that had begun with a chance meeting on the plains. They remembered the wide, golden land where they had first met, the conversations that had changed their lives, and the choice to embrace the unknown with courage and trust. They realized that their love had not only created a family, but had also shaped them into better people, people capable of patience, understanding, and profound care. One evening, as the sun set over the plains and the stars began to shine above, James sat by the fire, watching Aeon and their child move through the soft shadows. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. Life had not been simple, but it had been rich, meaningful, and full of love. He understood that the choices he had made, the courage to trust, the decision to embrace the unknown, and the willingness to build a life beyond fear, had brought him here, to a life far greater than he could have imagined. Aeon joined him by the fire, sitting close and taking his hand. "Do you remember the first day we met?" she asked softly. James smiled, remembering the cautious, quiet encounter that had begun everything. "I do," he said. "I never imagined it would lead to this. But I am grateful for every moment since then." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Life is full of surprises," she said. "Some are challenges, some are joys, but the moments we choose, the paths we take, define who we are and what we create. Together we have created something beautiful." James looked out across the plains, the land that had once seemed so vast and lonely now filled with life, laughter, and purpose. He felt a sense of peace and accomplishment, knowing that they had faced the unknown and built a life rooted in love, respect, and courage. Their child, their family, and the bond they shared were proof that even in a world of uncertainty, hope, connection, and love could thrive. And so life continued. The plains remained wide and golden, but now they were a place of growth, joy, and unity. James and Aeon walked side by side, facing challenges and celebrating victories, raising their child with wisdom and love. Their story became a quiet legend of the plains, a testament to the power of trust, courage, and the willingness to embrace life fully. The child grew up strong, curious, and kind, carrying the lessons of both parents, learning the values of respect, bravery, and understanding. And James, once a lone cowboy, now stood as a father, a partner, and a man who had discovered the true meaning of family and life. The plains, vast and golden, had brought him more than freedom. They had brought him connection, purpose, and a legacy that would endure through the generations. And as the sun set on another day, casting a warm glow over the plains, James and Aeon sat together, hand in hand, their hearts full of gratitude and hope. The journey had been long, the challenges real, but the life they had built was a testament to the courage to trust, the power of love, and the beauty of shared life. Together they had created something lasting, something strong and something meaningful, a family, a bond, and a story that would endure as long as the plains themselves.